Let me show you how I turned my breast milk into powder. And yes, this is very similar to formula, but with breast milk. So I am 3 months postpartum, and I produce an insane amount of milk. I was also storing a lot of milk, and eventually it just got too overwhelming where I didn't really have enough room in my home for all of my milk. Yes, I donated a lot of my milk to a lot of my mommy friends. I even offered it over on social media, and a lot of moms came and picked some up. So I know I produce a lot of milk. When I was pregnant with my third son, I already knew that my plan after giving birth that I was going to freeze dry my breast milk. And I think because I already knew that, it didn't really bother me that I was constantly pumping and constantly storing. But anyways, let's get into it. So Daniel and I, we invested in a freeze dryer. This is the Harvest Right freeze dryer. I would say it took us about 20 to 30 minutes to really get to know our machine. And we decided we were going to start with some frozen breast milk, specifically 1 bag per tray. You are also going to need a food scale. You're going to place your tray on top. You're going to zero it out before putting on your bar of breast milk. You can do 4 trays at a time. Every single bar is going to weigh out differently. So you need to make sure that you keep track of every single weight of every single bar. Then you're going to stick it in your freeze dryer for 27 hours. That's right. You heard me. 27 hours. Afterwards, it will look something like this. Then you're going to write down the new weight of what it is when it comes out. You also want to check and make sure there's absolutely no moisture in your powder. It has to be 100% dry in order for this to work. And yes, there were times when we messed up. Sometimes it wouldn't dry all the way through, and or we would find a couple of wet spots. But don't worry, we didn't throw it away. We now use it for the kids' bath. After a few oopsies, that's when we realized doing the ice blocks was actually really hard. So we decided that we would make the bars into more of a slushy form. That way we can add more bars to each tray. If I remember correctly, we ended up using 3 bars per tray. They were all placed. That's when we leveled it out. That way it's not touching anything when it enters the freeze dryer. Then again, you have to keep track of the weight before and after you put it in the dryer. So after each load, we would put it all into a food processor so that it breaks up all the big chunks and makes it into more of a fine powder. Now, depending on what kind of container you use, I am using this one that I got off of Amazon. You want to either use your scooper to measure out how much you're going to need per bottle, and you'll have to calculate how much water you'll need. So yes, you're going to have to know math to be able to do this. Daniel and I kept track of everything in our spreadsheet. Daniel would write down the weight of everything, how much we used, then he calculated how much water we would need to add in order to rehydrate it back to its original form. I wasn't kidding when I told you this is a lot of work. Eventually, over time, Daniel was fully in charge of doing all the freeze drying, which left me with a job to pump and store. So after every freeze drying session, I was in charge of putting it in the container. And for those asking, this has a 3-year shelf life. Eventually, I had a frozen supply so big that I stopped freezing my breast milk, and Daniel would immediately use it as a liquid. And can I just say, this way is so much easier, and you can use so much more milk. And because it takes 27 hours to dry, all I would do is pump for a full 24 hours, and then Daniel would put that into the freeze dryer. Basically, we were doing this every other day. Now, I do have to warn you, this machine is pretty loud, but I want to show you guys the difference from using liquid versus using frozen. I definitely recommend the liquid. But here we are 2 months later. I am no longer pumping. We are no longer freeze drying. We are happy with our stash, and now I only breastfeed. Now, when it comes to the nutritional value, from all the research we've done, you don't lose anything doing this method. But feel free to do the research like we did, because again, I am not a professional. But I can't tell you how much money I've saved doing this myself.